So, the Modern Warfare beta is finally here, and we, the general public, can start to figure out whether all of the marketing stuff that Activision has been putting out there is really anything like the final product. In this video, I'm kind of going to give you my thoughts and opinions on what I've played so far. I've played about 4 or 5 hours of the beta. I've definitely got some thoughts and opinions. Infinity Ward have done some stuff really well, and they've done some stuff not so well in my opinion. And in this video, because at the moment the beta is only in early access PS4 phase, later this weekend it goes into full PS4 mode, and then next weekend the Xbox One and the PC can join. It's a really convoluted system, but whatever. I'm going to try and paint a picture in this video for anyone out there who hasn't had a chance to play it yet. This is obviously all my own opinion, and if you disagree with things that I'm saying, then, you know, that's totally fine. You'll have your own opinions as well, but maybe drop some of those down below in the comments section and just let me know what you're thinking. But let's get right into it. First of all, I think we should talk about the gunplay. I've spoken about gunplay a lot for Battlefield 5 over the last year or so, and it's always a big topic when it comes to first-person shooters. Most of the time you are running around with a gun in your hand, so I guess it's important how that actually feels. In Modern Warfare, at the moment, based on my first impressions, I really like it. It's really enjoyable. It's tight as hell. There are some moments of significant recoil that you have to deal with, that's for sure, but once you've got your aim in and you're sort of used to the feeling of the game, you start to get that classic old Call of Duty feeling returning, and if this game is supposed to be like an homage or a reimagining of the older Modern Warfare franchise, or a reboot, or whatever you want to call it, then the gunplay stands up as a real highlight. It's something you remember almost instantly. The time to kill? It is ridiculously fast. Most of the time you're being taken down by people who are close enough that they could smell your breath, and that means that damage is always ultra high. Just a few bullets and you're going to be killing somebody. That's going to be familiar to most of the avid Call of Duty players out there, but having spent the last 12 months playing Battlefield 5, I thought that my transition over to this game would be a little bit difficult, but Battlefield 5 also has a fast time to kill, and I didn't actually find the transition all that difficult. I've been able to pick up most of the automatic weapons in the game, like the assault rifles, the carbines, the SMGs. I've been taking down multiple enemies with really no issue, provided I get my positioning right, so even though when I get bested by somebody and the bullets hammer me faster than I can even react, I know that I'm doing that very same thing to most other players on the server as well when I shoot at them. It is definitely a fast TTK setup in this game, but I do like the fact that it's fast. It's putting emphasis on gun control and mastery, and it's really pushing you to focus on your positioning as well. If you go off firing your weapon in the middle of open spaces, chances are somebody's going to see you, and they're going to take you down. Whereas if you keep tight to cover, moving around buildings, and always making sure you're keeping an ear out for enemy gunfire or footsteps, then you are going to have a much better time. In that respect, it's still very similar to previous Call of Duty games. Now, I mentioned the positioning a little bit there, and I want to talk about that a little bit more because it is a bigger part of the conversation around movement in Modern Warfare. Soldier movement around the maps is extremely fluid, and I think it goes beyond what previous games have offered in the franchise. There's barely a moment's delay when you hit a button and that movement actually being represented on the screen, which might not be particularly authentic. It doesn't really mimic any kind of real combat, but it makes for engaging gameplay in a video game, and I think that's definitely more important. I especially like the new mounting feature where almost any weapon can be rested behind cover, and then you can use that cover as a bipod almost. It reduces your recoil quite a bit, but that's at the expense of you being unable to move around from that spot unless it's pivoting your aim backwards and forwards. You become motionless in a game where almost everyone else is moving around trying to kill you, so it is a bit of a trade-off, but I do like it. If you've got like a line of sight that you're locking down, you should be able to dominate that for a few moments before someone on the enemy team realizes and they end up flanking you. I also like the super ultra fast sprinting option where you sort of pick up your gun and you carry it with one hand on the right hand side of your screen. I really like that function. It's like a second stage of sprinting. Now, I've been playing the game with mouse and keyboard attached to the PS4, so to activate that second stage of sprint, you tap the sprint button again, and then you lift it up on the screen. I don't really know how you do it on controller. I did actually struggle with the first couple of games where I was using controller, and then I figured out that I could use a mouse and keyboard, so I plugged those in pretty quickly. But it really does speed up how fast you move across the maps. I mean, that's fairly self-explanatory. It's an extra version of the sprint and it is faster, but it really does affect how quickly you can get around. Dashes across open spaces, they become slightly less lethal, but you need to use it tactically. If you're running around super sprinting everywhere, it takes you longer to transition back into ADS, so trying to shoot somebody from that really fast sprint actually puts you at a disadvantage. So I've kind of been using it to sort of get around a corner really quickly or to sprint across a road so that I'm not shot at as easily. I found that using it in the right places is really helpful, but using it all the time is nowhere near as helpful. What I notice most of all though is that this super fast sprinting, it makes the maps feel smaller than they actually are because you can move across them that little bit faster. Modern Warfare is doing away with that tradition of creating these really small 3-lane maps, and instead they're tossing in a few larger ones, but to kind of compensate for that greater traversal that you now have to do, you've got this extra sprint option, which is really nice. And you can tie it in with some crouch sliding as well, and you can start getting super aggressive with SMGs on enemy players. That's always really fun to try, but in general, with that super speed sprinting and the mounting and the being able to vault over everything, the movement system never really held me back in the time that I've played so far. And I think that's a really good sign of a system that's been honed to almost perfection. I'm not going to say it's perfect, it's not 100% perfect, but I can't really fault the implementation of what the dev team has done here. The actual system and all the mechanics that are on offer for you to move around the map, I really like it. It doesn't really get in the way. That's probably the best accolade that I can give it. Something else that I really like is the simplicity of your loadout in this game. And I know that might sound strange, lots of people want more granular control of their loadouts in certain video games, but here in Modern Warfare, everything is very streamlined, it's really easy to understand. Jump into the gunsmith menus, messing around with attachments, being able to see the visual changes to your weapon on the screen, that's a really nice touch. But your loadout in general is very easy to swap in and out, and there's plenty of weapons that you can use in the beta that will give you different experiences. I couldn't resist going in with SMGs and then playing really aggressively, but I know there are a lot of people out there who would prefer a slower pace, and so LMGs and snipers are there for you guys to use. The simplicity of putting together your loadout, that's what I appreciated. I didn't have to mess around too much in order to get something that I was comfortable with. I could just create a class and go, load into the map and run around. That's really what I'm looking for here. Now, there are a couple of issues that I've noticed during my playtime so far. I mean, when I say issues, it's more just general feedback about some of the things that I feel could be better or might be better if they were slightly different. It's nothing massively major. I don't want to make a big deal out of any of these things, but this is an open beta, and betas are for giving feedback and giving the development team data, so here's my set of things that could maybe be better. First, the respawn animation, this swooping in from above, from the clouds down onto the map every single time you're respawning. It's cool the first few times it happens, but after a while you kind of realise that it isn't as fluid or as dynamic as the one that's present in Battlefield. That is of course my main FPS background, and now Modern Warfare has this respawning animation. You look at the Battlefield one and they are very, very similar, so it's difficult not to compare them. In Modern Warfare, you can't choose your own spawn point, it's done by the game for you, and there is like this second or so delay after the kill cam where everything just sort of runs static. You're sort of hanging in the sky waiting to respawn, and then it swoops down. It feels like a dead second or so's worth of time that could actually be removed from the loop, and because you can't choose where you want to respawn, it's really frustrating just staring at the screen and nothing really happening. It's not a bad respawning system in general, and it's certainly different from what's been in the franchise before, but beyond those first few times, I didn't really feel like it added much value to the experience. It's one of those additions that I wouldn't have missed if it wasn't actually in the game, if you see what I'm saying. And then, I think it's only right that we talk about the minimap or UAV spam, and that's having an effect on gameplay. It really depends on your viewpoint as to whether you think this is a bad thing or not, but I've seen a lot of people saying that with the minimap being removed from normal gameplay, that leads to more campy playstyles, and that is certainly true. And it has slowed down combat somewhat as well, but by having 3 or 4 different UAV options as kill streaks, that brings back the minimap for a lot of players very quickly if those options are chosen to be selected kill streaks. So you just end up with a bit of UAV spam, even though the minimap's not supposed to be there. It ends up being there quite a lot during the round. There's this weird imbalance in the combat. Basically, I think the devs need to go one way or the other. They need to make the minimap permanent, or they need to turn it off completely and make players use the compass at the top of the screen and do away with the kill streaks that use a minimap. That's just my personal opinion. I know some people are going to disagree because they want the minimap, and some people don't want the minimap, but those are pretty much the two options, and at the moment the developers are kind of sitting in the middle, giving people the minimap and not giving it to them. They either need to give it to them or not give it to them, and stick with one of those options. Another little thing I noticed, if you're playing in a party, your friends aren't highlighted in any way on the screen, so I'd like to see those players highlighted in a certain colour, maybe green. I think other games use green, so that you always know where your friends are and you can coordinate with them. And right now, doors make some ridiculously loud crashing sounds when you open or charge through them. Louder than nearly anything else in the game, including firing your gun, so I think that needs to be turned down a little bit. But overall, right now, I am quite enjoying the Modern Warfare beta for what it is at the moment. The classic playstyle and the content that we have to play, for me, is a good step forward from the last couple of titles in the Call of Duty franchise, and being back in that Modern Warfare setting, that is just quite a good place to be. I hear that more content is going to be opened up through the weekend, some of the larger game modes, and that's where I want to see how Battlefield-esque this game becomes, if at all, so I'll definitely be playing more, and I'll probably post another video over the weekend. But that's my thoughts and opinions. If you haven't played the beta, there's some gameplay in the background, thoughts and opinions. You can come to your own conclusion. But thanks very much for watching, and until next time, my name is Westie, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.